Hey folks, before we get started, I just wanted to tell you, you can unlock unlimited access to political news, commentary, opinion, and a whole lot more at inforum.news/port for only 99 cents a month for your first 3 months. Hurry, get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now. This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes, empowering our vehicles, to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org. Welcome to Plain Talk, and happy Friday to you. Happy to be with you as always. We have the North Dakota Republican Party convention coming up this weekend on Saturday, and it's by all accounts it's going to be a little chaotic. And hey, sometimes democracy is chaotic, right? I mean that's not always a bad thing. I think sometimes it just matters what's motivating it, right? There's not a thing in the world wrong with vigorous competition in the marketplace of ideas or in the political arena. That's how our system is set up, and I think works best when that sort of thing happens. I think the problem is when you see a lot of it being motivated by anger and resentment. That's where things become a little worrisome. Anyway, as someone who's expected to address the state convention and to deliver a lot of people have been talking about this. Is former Governor Ed Schafer, and it's a consequential speech, I think, for two reasons. First of all, this is happening on what is really the sort of 30-year anniversary. This year is 30 years since Governor Schafer was first elected to office, and in a lot of ways kicked off the sort of modern era of Republican political dominance in the state of North Dakota. When Ed Schafer was elected governor of North Dakota, the idea of Republican dominance in North Dakota was not reality. We had Democratic governors before. We had Democratic members of Congress. We had, it was a time where really Democrats were in charge, and Ed Schafer ushered in, what we've come to know now as Republican leadership in our state. And so, but also, we're at a bit of a crossroads for the North Dakota Republican Party, where there is factionalism, there's people fighting with each other, and this convention could become, if some of the talk and some of the news certainly that I've been writing about, if it comes true, could be very chaotic. So anyway, I won't filibuster any longer. I'm going to bring the man himself on, former Governor Ed Schafer. How you doing, sir?
I'm well. Good morning, Rod. Great to be with you.
How do you feel about giving the speech as you head into the convention?
Well, I'm kind of excited about it. I've been thinking about speaking in front of a convention, I've been reliving those old times that you talked about, the 1992 Republican convention, where I was in a field of three, third in a field of three to get the nomination. And, we pulled off the nomination and really set fire to the Republican Party, and people went to work with Republican principles, and we reshaped our government and really set us on this path to not only Republican dominance in the state, but really set our state in a place from where we came with, being in the doldrums in the 80s and kind of an unknown state with nothing going on, to world-class agriculture and energy and known for our economy and our population growth and, the place to be. So it's been an interesting 30 years for sure. And it's been based on, and what I'll talk about is Republican principles of, less spending, more efficiency, less intrusive government. That's what shaped our government. And it's those policies that put us in the place we are today.
I think that's a really interesting point, because it's not just about the success of Republicans getting themselves elected. It's that Republicans running on a platform of good ideas have really created a lot of success for North Dakota. I mean, and I think a lot of people say, oh, well, the oil boom happened, and that's what. But really, you can mismanage an oil boom, right? Like that's not an automatic thing. You can screw that up. We've proven that we can allow energy development, we can allow farmers to farm and ranchers to ranch, and we can balance that with environmental stewardship, and we can manage, even though sometimes some of the budgeting process makes me want to pull my hair out. If we zoom out to a 30,000-foot view, generally, I think Republican leadership in our state has been good stewards. And to your point, I think we've kind of got, what's that old Eric Severide remark about North Dakota being a blank spot on the nation's imagination? I think today, in 2022, we're not that anymore. When we talk about energy, when we talk about agriculture on the national stage, North Dakota gets mentioned, and not just by people who are from North Dakota. So, I mean, that's maybe because it happened so slowly and it kind of happened over 30 years, people don't understand how big of a change that really has been.
Well, and you make a point in energy, and I don't want to make my comments tomorrow at the convention, including this, because you said you can manage an energy boom or whatever, and we did that well. But really, it's tax policy that created the energy boom, and Republicans are for lower taxes, less regulatory intrusion. Not giving up on regulations, but having regulations that are cost efficient and workable by the companies out there. And in 1995, we put a tax holiday, 2-year tax holiday on extraction tax for horizontal dry wells going in, or vertical dry wells. And if you went in and drilled them horizontally, which was the new technology that released the Bakken, if you went into a dry vertical hole, drilled it horizontally, so you didn't have to have a new pad and new, everything, we gave you a 2-year tax holiday. And that really started to generate, people started leasing, started financing, started moving equipment, things started to move in the Bakken. And it was tax policy that did that. And 2 years later, in '97, when we saw that it was going to work, we came in and made that tax holiday permanent. And things started to move forward. And then 10 years later, and that's a timeline that's not unusual, but 10 years later, when somebody finally figured out how to marry hydraulic fracturing with horizontal drilling, boom, the things went off. And, I like to point out that it wasn't eureka, we just found all this oil. We knew the oil was there, but it was Republican generated lowering of taxes and tax policy that made that happen. At the same time, we made sure that we weren't barriers by regulation, but had the strongest regulations for siting, the strongest regulations for hydraulic fracturing. We made sure that we stayed on top of the game to keep our environment and our people safe and strong. So, it's that, in my opinion, those Republican principles that made this state what it is today. And those are the points that I think we need to make as a Republican Party is, the difference of opinion, the things that go back and forth, have always been in politics. It's usually between Republicans and Democrats. But we've been there so long and have all of the offices and all of the strength in leadership. And so now we're getting this difference of opinion and kind of fighting and back and forth between individuals as Republicans. Now is the time to focus on Republican values and what makes a difference in performance of your government. And that, I think, if we can convince our party to focus on values and not on individuals, I think we'll get back in shape.
I think that's really interesting because to your point, what got Republicans where they're at today is not just because they had R's behind their name. I think that's sort of an analysis that, well, if you're a Republican in North Dakota, you win automatically. And maybe that's true right now, but we got to that point because North Dakota voters have come to trust that Republican leaders are going to make the right decisions for North Dakota. Listen, I was just at the Democratic State Convention last weekend, and there's some fine people in that room. There are some smart people who love North Dakota, who want to do the best by our state, and who, frankly, are worth listening to when we are having policy debates. I don't agree with them most of the time, but I think that they're good people worth listening to, and they aren't winning elections because Republicans, frankly, have been just good on policy. I think they've been pragmatic. I think they've been thoughtful and forward-looking. And generally, with some exceptions, and we can have debates on, but from an aggregate point of view, have done a good job for our state. And what I see happening inside the Republican Party right now baffles me a little bit, Ed, because it has been so successful. I really don't understand what people are upset about. And I'm wondering, does that confuse you too?
Well, it doesn't confuse me because you always have that discourse, the public conversation, the internal conversation. Are we conservative enough? Are we saving enough money? Are we doing? You always have those kinds of debates going on. The problem that we've gotten into are the tactics that are being used, and people are getting nasty out there. They're trying to. They say incendiary things, so they get on Facebook and TikTok and whatever all those things are. The tactics are negative, and they are used against Republicans, and that starts giving Republicans a bad image. It starts giving Republicans a black eye. And again, I think it's because the focus is on I'm right, you're wrong. The focus is on I'm smarter than you. The focus is on I'm more conservative than you are, this and that. So instead of coming together and saying, no, this is Republican policy on tax. This is Republican policy on regulation. This is I might believe, a little more on a conservative standpoint than someone else does. But you know what? If we develop policies still based within those parameters of Republican ideals and character, that's what performs. That's what gets the job done. That's what gets Republicans elected. And I think the whole social media thing, the angst, people are angry, people are upset, and instead of just hashing that out and saying, okay, here's how we come together with public policy with the good pieces from all this debate, we start getting into these personal skirmishes, which defeats our purpose.
It's funny that you mentioned the social media stuff, because just before we started recording this, and the people listening to this are going to be able to go find this column. I just filed it. It's not published as we're speaking, but I filed it just before we began the interview, and it was about the headline is that there are perverse incentives in modern politics, and what I mean by that is there are people who political figures who can find reward in just creating spectacle, right? When it kind of doing maybe some of the antics we come to expect from like reality television people or maybe celebrities or whatever, where I think they say and they do bombastic things for their own sake because that gets them, the sort of currency that they trade in on social media, which is likes and retweets and attention and views and all the rest of that. Do you see that going on? Because I mean, and listen, there have always been perverse incentives in politics, and I understand that. I just feel like right now that it becomes, for some political figures, a sort of feedback loop where I say certain things or I behave a certain way and I get more Facebook attention and I can leverage that into getting myself reelected, and sort of servicing that feedback loop becomes more important than, hey, I better vote the right way on funding highways or funding schools or making sure our tax policy is up to snuff. I look at that and it's just, people react to incentives, right? I mean, we talk about the marketplace all the time and how people react to incentives in the marketplace. That seems to be the incentive for a lot of people in the political marketplace today.
I believe it is, and I'm not a social media person, so I don't know what to say. But here's the issue, and I think it creates a shallowness that's in there, as you said. People don't get in deep enough, saying, should I, vote for this for better highway construction? You don't have those discussions, because what happens, and here's the perfect example that did just happen. President Biden says, this, three things. Then he walks them back because they weren't appropriate, or it was a gaffe or a misstatement or whatever. Then, he gets challenged by a reporter, and the reporter says, but, you walk it back, but you said this, and this. And Biden looks right in the camera and he says, that never happened. I never said that. And so the media picks it up. Biden never said it. It's a false charge. It isn't there. It's all over the media. It's all over Facebook. It's all over TikTok and Twitter. And by the way, the kids, as I call them, I'm an old guy, the kids that live in downtown Fargo believe it. So you have this constant barrage of, if I just say it over and over again, if I just do it, if I just continue to retweet it and like it and all this and that, it's believable, and it's it ends up being what people believe is the truth. And it's a crazy system today, because we're just skipping along the surface like a skipping stone, zip, 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 with deep issues and important policy, and just skimming along, passing along, liking them. And people think, boy, if I like that tweet, I'm really getting involved, and I'm really doing something, and it's bad for our country.
Do you, coming back to the state convention that's going to be held this weekend, we're seeing some stuff, there's going to be some procedural maneuvering. There's a big debate over the rules now, where, they want to try to change the rules and say, the June primary doesn't matter. Whoever's endorsed at the convention is the nominee, which, I think probably runs contrary to what state law is. And we can have a debate about whether that should be what the law is, but it is the law, and it's the one everybody's been following for a long time now. As you're watching some of this stuff, you're going to be addressing this convention that's debating this stuff. What's your message to them as they try to settle those disagreements?
Well, I think fortunately or unfortunately, my comments are coming after all those disagreements.
Right. Well, that's true.
Settled one way or another, so I don't get the opportunity to kind of shape that a little bit. But here's the. I think here's the view that I have. I think there are a lot of people. We've got 2,200 plus delegates coming to this convention, and there are a lot of new people coming to this convention. There are a lot of people that are angry with our federal government, that don't like our freedoms being taken away, that don't like the tax policy, that don't like what's going on, and they're getting engaged, and they're coming in. And so people have been able to take advantage of that. In districts, in our redistricting thing, where districts didn't have bylaws or didn't have officers yet or didn't have this, they go in, they change it up. The new people say, oh, gee, that's the way it goes, and whatever. And again, we focus on the individuals and what I think is right and what my opinion is, and a lot of times force that opinion on others. And you've written about, how they just kind of filibuster things until, people have to leave and go home to work, and then they take the vote and, get a vote that is kind of maneuvered. And so, I think it's a tactical issue. And again, it's tactics saying it's me, it's my power, it's my view of what's right, it's my opinion. And we need to move away from that as Republicans. And I think the Republican Party is made up of each one of us. Each of us Republicans has to say This is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. And I'm going to move forward and commit to advancing Republican principles and Republican opinions, and move away from this individual stuff, or we're going to start losing elections.
Do you think we're having a hard time defining what those Republican principles are right now? Because I look around a little bit. I'll have a print column up on Saturday, which will be the big day at the convention. Kind of asking how do you get the Republican Party to unify when it doesn't really seem to be a lot of agreement on what it means to be a Republican? I think you and I could throw out some generalities like, well, we limit government, have a tax code that's reasonable regulations, I think we could toss those out. I'm just not sure there's a lot of agreement right now on what that means.
Well, I think there are two issues, and those issues have become confusing and difficult to govern with, and that is something that we need to address. So, in my opinion, we should have two separate pieces of the platform in the Republican Party. One is those basic principles, those understanding of, the less expensive, less intrusive, more efficient government. However you want to articulate those particular pieces, that should be the core values, the pieces of the Republican Party. The other piece of the platform, are all the social issues and the advancement and the trying to give direction to the party or whatever. And I think that brings us back to saying, we can always debate these other issues. If we have some social issue here, let's debate it. And there are people on both sides of the opinion on that in our party. There are people that think differently in our party. And guess what? They're honest, they're careful, they're studious, they're prayerful about how they got to that opinion, and that should be debated. But in the midst of all that debate, you cannot debate these absolute core principles of the party. I think we need to define them, we need to be able to articulate them, and we need to instill them in Republicans so that they wear them on their sleeve when they go to work in the Republican Party.
I think that's probably, if you talk to like a Rick Becker or a Jared Hendricks or some of the people that are pushing, a lot of these, I think they would say that that's exactly what they want, that they want, all the time they're saying, well, we're the ones who truly represent, the Republican platform and things like that. And I guess you could have a debate about that. But if that's, I think they would argue that that's what they want as well.
Well, good. If that's what they want, they're not getting it because their tactics are mean and nasty, and they're saying things on Facebook, and they're putting Republicans down, and they're chopping the legs out of officers, and they're you don't get it that way. I agree. I have conservative core principles that I carry that are based on Republican Party ideals, and if that's what they're looking for, I'm all in. But you know what? We're not going to get there by fighting each other. We're going to get there arm in arm and committing to those principles and instilling them in people that go into office, that are elected into office, and deliver them to the people of North Dakota.
One thing I've heard you talk about is what you tried to, what you brought and what you wanted to define, the Republican Party that you led into dominance in North Dakota was that it was a very optimistic movement, a very positive movement. And personally, that's something that's always very much resonated with me. I grew up kind of at the tail end of the Reagan era, and that was something that really attracted me to people like Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, as it seemed at the center of their politics was a fundamental optimism about what America is and what America could be. And that's what I really look for in a lot of leaders. Right now, it just seems like there's so much negativity and so much cynicism about this stuff. And I think that's really missing right now. And I don't know if you perceive the same thing, but I really miss the optimistic, the uplifting sort of political leadership. I'm looking around. I don't see a lot of it right now.
Well, and that, you're hitting on a point, Rob, that's extremely important. And that is, if you look at Democrats versus Republicans, and I'm coming at it from a Republican standpoint, of course, but if you look at the difference in philosophy about what we think about government, Democrats believe that government is the answer. Democrats believe that government should control, should tell, should direct, and to deliver that government, guess what? They have to say, government is awful. Everything is bad. Your lives are trashed. You can't do anything. We need to come in with government to save you, to help you have a better life, to help you do better. We need our government to do that. And so they create this negativity, this bad picture, this awfulness that's there. And guess what? That's what is perceived in the marketplace or the society or the culture, that everything is awful and bad. Republicans don't believe that. Republicans believe that individuals, not government, are the answer. And when you do that and you say, you as an individual have an opportunity, we're going to remove barriers out of your way so that you can perform, make a better life, earn more money, go to school where you want to go to school, go to whichever church you want to go to. We're going to open up. We're going to provide freedom for you as an individual. That's happiness. That's good. That's positive. And the difference of shaping government through a Democratic viewpoint and through a Republican viewpoint is totally different. And as you said, I'm optimistic. I create an optimistic atmosphere out there. And that's what gets people to perform, not government. Optimism and hope is what puts people shoulder to the wheel to get better job, better performance, better families, better education. It's individual effort, and that's a good thing, a positive thing, and should be a happy thing that our government is there with a soft breeze behind us, giving us a little lift as we go forward, and not a smashing in the face torrent wind pushing us back all the time. So I think it's a perfect definition of between the two parties. Unfortunately, where we are today with not just from the party politics, but with our society and our culture and our neighbors, we're in this, everything is bad, everything is awful, you're bad, you don't agree with me, you're awful. And, we're starting to chip away at that goodness that's in our country, a goodness that's in our society, and that goodness that should be in there in our government. And it's hurting us. And I think the Republican Party is perfectly positioned to bring that element back to the people, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to turn the corner and do so.
Well, boy, we could do a whole show just on that. Everything from, you look at our fascination with dystopia in our popular entertainment movies and books that are always about the end of the world, to, this insistence that when we teach American history, we're only going to teach it from the perspective of our failings. Not to say that our failings aren't important to teach, but they're certainly not the only thing we ever did. So I don't know. We could do a whole show, just on a return to American optimism. That would be really interesting. But I've used up enough of your time. I'm really looking forward to your speech on Saturday, and looking forward. As chaotic, I think a lot of people are talking, as chaotic as I think this convention is going to be. At the end of the day, I don't think we have anything to fear from that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I still want the process to work. I want people to come together and make good faith efforts to resolve their differences with one another, right? Because that's what our system is supposed to provide, or various venues to do just that. So I'm looking forward to the convention, and certainly looking forward to your speech, Ed, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be with you.
Want more political news like this? Visit inforum.news/port to get 3 months of unlimited access to our news network for only 99 cents a month. Don't wait. Get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now.